Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're dissecting a feeling that, honestly, pretty much everyone has experienced, yet we rarely ever stop to actually analyze it. We are talking about the heavy, highly commercialized expectations behind holiday gift giving. We're going to unpack exactly where this immense pressure comes from, and more importantly, how it completely shapes our behavior. So let's just dive right in.
I want you to really think about it for a second. Have you ever felt that crushing, almost paralyzing stress of needing to prove your love through some really expensive purchase? We have all been there, right? Staring at a price tag, doing absolute mental gymnastics with our bank accounts, feeling like our affection is somehow being directly measured by the dollar amount we spend. It definitely feels like a modern anxiety, and it brings tremendous financial stress. But as we're about to discover, this is definitely not a new phenomenon.
Section 1. The pressure to buy. Because this immense pressure isn't just a 21st century anxiety, it is actually a deeply rooted historical trap that has been dictating our choices for well over 100 years.
This consumer trap really started to take hold back in the early 20th century as holidays became heavily commercialized. It basically works in 3 steps. Step 1, society begins pushing this overwhelming narrative that you absolutely must buy gifts. Step 2, that societal pressure starts to morph into an emotional equation where love is suddenly tied directly to money, basically saying if you truly love someone, you must buy them an expensive gift. And finally, step 3, because we buy into that false equation, people are driven to make extreme, sometimes completely devastating personal sacrifices just to meet the expectation.
Section 2. Applying a sociocultural lens. To truly understand just how devastating this pressure can be, we are going to analyze this commercial expectation using a very specific framework, and we'll apply it to a classic case study, O. Henry's famous 1905 short story, The Gift of the Magi. Before we get into our case study, which features a young married couple named Jim and Della, we need to establish our framework. A sociocultural lens simply means we examine their story by asking 2 main sets of questions. First, regarding society, what were the unwritten rules, the strict gender roles, and the social classes of the time? Second, regarding culture, what did people value, how did money affect them, and what were their actual daily living conditions? Using this lens strips away all the romanticized gloss and lets us see the raw, unfiltered reality of their choices.
Section 3. Poverty and Gender Expectations. Now, let's see how the crushing realities of working-class poverty, combined with the incredibly strict gender roles of the early 1900s, acted as massive multipliers to this gift-giving pressure. Let's set the socioeconomic scene here. It is 1905, New York City. Jim and Della belong to the working class. They are a family working incredibly hard literally just to survive. $1.87. That is all Della has managed to scrape together and save for Christmas. And to get that meager amount, she had to relentlessly bargain with the grocer and the butcher. From a sociocultural standpoint, this level of poverty causes severe emotional stress. Della feels deeply embarrassed having to beg for these tiny discounts. You see, society at that time made poor people feel a profound sense of shame regarding their financial struggles. It made the prospect of buying a nice gift feel utterly impossible. To put that impossibility into perspective, let's look at their income. Jim actually recently suffered a severe pay cut, dropping from $30 a week down to just $20. Out of that $20, $8, which is a massive 40% of his entire income, vanishes immediately just to pay for their very small apartment. When nearly half your money goes strictly to shelter, the basic math of survival leaves absolutely zero room for luxury, let alone an expensive holiday gift. And the physical environment they live in is just constantly reminding them of this hardship. They have a broken doorbell, a mailbox they can't even use, a worn-out couch, and a mirror that is way too small. Now, this isn't just background set dressing. This depressing reality actively amplifies their severe emotional stress. I mean, think about it. When your everyday life is completely surrounded by broken, worn-out things, the societal pressure to buy something shiny, new, and expensive for someone you love becomes incredibly heavy. But here's the thing. Poverty was only half the trap. We also have to look at the incredibly strict gender roles of the early 1900s. Della, as the wife, is expected by society to be a perfect homemaker, and crucially, her beauty is considered her main social asset. On the flip side, we have Jim. As the husband, society expects him to be the main provider, the absolute pillar of the home, and to carry all the family pride on his shoulders. Keep in mind, Jim is only 22 years old. The burden on this young guy to provide a good life and a fine gift is just monumental. So the absolutely crucial point here is what happens when you combine extreme poverty, these super strict gender roles, and the heavy consumer pressure to buy a gift that proves your love. Well, you get ultimate, desperate sacrifices. Driven entirely by the societal equation that money equals love, Della decides to sacrifice her long hair, which was the ultimate symbol of female beauty and femininity at the time. Meanwhile, Jim, feeling the immense pressure to provide, sacrifices his gold watch, a prized family heirloom passed down from his father and his grandfather. They are quite literally selling the very things that define their societal worth.
The emotional toll of this decision is just heartbreaking. After cutting and selling her hair, Della is terrified. She worries sick that Jim will think she looks ugly, comparing herself to a Coney Island chorus girl. This perfectly highlights the intense fear and the massive pressure women felt to maintain their appearance for their husbands. She sacrificed her greatest asset for him, but is immediately struck with the sheer terror that she's completely failed her societal gender role.
Section 4. The tragic irony. Because here is where the brutal reality of their consumer-driven decisions is finally revealed in the climax of the story.
The irony of the situation is devastating. Della sells her beautiful hair to buy a platinum chain for Jim's watch. Meanwhile, Jim sells his prized watch to buy expensive, jeweled combs for Della's hair. The end result? Perfectly matched, beautiful, and completely 100% useless gifts. Society taught them to value bought items, to prove their love through commerce. They followed the rules, they made the ultimate sacrifices, and they ended up with items they literally cannot use.
Section 5. The wisest gift. Now, thankfully, O. Henry doesn't just leave us sitting with the tragedy. He resolves this massive irony by completely subverting societal expectations and redefining what makes a gift truly valuable. At the very end of the story, the author compares Jim and Della to the original Magi. You know, the 3 wise men from the Bible who brought gifts to baby Jesus. But look at the incredible contrast here. The original Magi were rich kings. They gave expensive gifts out of their extra wealth, things they could very easily spare. Jim and Della, on the other hand, are a poor, working-class couple who gave up absolutely everything they had out of pure love. The author is taking society's nasty habit of measuring a person's worth by their money or status and completely flipping it on its head.
And that leads us to the story's powerful moral conclusion. Of all who give gifts, these 2 were the wisest. This right here is the core message of our explainer today. Society might try to measure worth by status and shiny, expensive price tags, but true devotion, true wealth, is about unselfish sacrifice. Jim and Della's gifts were physically useless, sure, but the pure love and sacrifice behind them made those items infinitely more valuable than anything the consumer culture of 1905, or even today, could ever demand.
So I want to leave you with one final provocative question. How will you subvert modern commercial pressures the next time you give a gift? The very next time you feel that crushing stress to prove your affection with your wallet, I want you to remember the trap Jim and Della fell into, and remember how they ultimately transcended it. Because true love doesn't actually have a price tag. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this helps you redefine the true value of a gift in your own life. See you next time.